Hey everyone, welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive Show with me, Reed Daly. Today is, I have to actually look at the date, today is March 6th, 2024, and I'm smiling and happy because I've done a ton of prep in my office, and I'm heading to a number of conferences this week, both in Chicago and in Boston. So just excited to kind of finally get out of the office, get out behind the screen and kind of meet some folks. But before I jump into all that, I want to remind you that the Digital Deep Dive Show is available on Apple Podcast and Spotify. You can check us out over on LinkedIn, and we've got the newsletter there. And if you're a social person, don't forget to check us out on X and Instagram. I know some people are more of a LinkedIn, some people like YouTube, some people just like the audio. So we got a little bit of everything. With that said, let's jump into the show. Obviously, this is the year of AI. Or I guess last year was the year of the AI. This year is the year of everyone building a model or using a plugin. And one of the big players in the space is Meta, although they are not getting as much attention as OpenAI and Microsoft. And what they've done is they've come out with their Purple Llama model. And so the idea of why it's called purple is you have what's called a red team and a blue team, and this is stealing from some cybersecurity sort of A/B testing, white hacking methodology. And the thinking was you combine those two colors and you get the purple team, and it's all about open trust and safety and bolt-ons to evaluate and help developers build responsible models with AI. And I think this is going to become an increasingly hot topic, both at a federal, national level, as well as organizations. Just basically, do these models have bias? Have they been developed as a result, developed with bias, developed by folks with bias, or is the data that's being inputted into them causing them to invoke biases? And so, Meta provided a blurb on this on their website, and then there's a huge, lengthy document I haven't read through yet. But, I continue to think that this will be a sort of a check and balance of how the model performs, biasness and skewed. I think you're seeing some of this just in terms of some of the stuff that happened with Google and Gemini 2 weeks ago in terms of some concerns of some of the images it was producing and where they got some of that information and how that information caused a little uproar in terms of the visualizations it created. So interested to see what Meta puts out, and I'm sure you're going to see more similar sort of guardrails coming out, and maybe not with their primary models, but maybe a secondary or tertiary models that they'll have for certain demographics. Maybe there'll be like one for their kind of core model, then the one for their enterprise, one for special interest groups, etc. Jumping from AI, I want to go to something that I can't even tell you how I ended up here, but I was really intrigued by it. So somehow I ended up on GeekWire, and I don't spend a lot of time over there. And I read about Kara Snyder. And so she's been an entrepreneur. She was CEO of the year back in 2021, I think, through GeekWire. And she has recently created a new company website called Nerd Processor. And back in 2024, she did a market study on interruptions and workplace interruptions based on gender and level. And she wants to revisit now because we have Zoom versus non-Zoom, or I suppose the right way to say that is in-person versus non-in-person. And what does interrupting or impacting people's performance equate to? And she's got a newsletter that I went up and subscribed to because everything she sort of talked about was being very data-driven, which I'm interested in. And the one thing that really irks me in corporate culture is how many people schedule early morning meetings, and it's that's my productivity time. And when you ping me, and I'm certainly guilty of this, but when you ping me, you've interrupted my flow, and now I've lost focus. And I'm a huge person who loves to batch. So when I do my podcasting, my social media, my outreach, my email responses, everything's a batch. I try not to pivot from one thing to another, I just find it exhausting. And, sometimes this hurts me when, someone needs an immediate response, either a client or a teammate or someone we're collaborating with. But for the most part, I don't run into too many issues. And I just, thanks to enough alerts and responses and Calendly links and things like that, I can mitigate it. But I'll be interested to continue to see, her research and kind of like what are some implications based on, in person versus Zoom, different leadership, different genders, different parts of the world, maybe even like different industries or size of companies. That will be interesting to see. All right, so if we're going to talk about, Catherine and kind of interruptions and what's going on in the corporate space, let's jump over to talking about another what I thought was a pretty important story, which was Accenture buying Udacity, which is an online learning platform. And a couple things came to mind when I saw this story. First and foremost was the price tag. I think this asset was once valued at $300 million. It's reported that Accenture paid about $80 million. So I don't know what that is. That's like a sixth of the price. And I was trying to think of the implications. So the press release, talked about the fact that they did this to help educate folks on AI and how to be more prolific at using AI. But when I thought about this more, and obviously I don't work at that firm, but what are some of the implications? So I think first and foremost, it would be able to train your staff. So you basically have one of the world's best, LMSs, or presumably one of the top LMSs, and LMS stands for Learning Management Solution or Software. And now you're being able to serve up courses. So you can upskill your labor, which not only helps you with retention, but it helps you with upsell, cross-sell of team members and keeping folks from a utilization standpoint more busy at Accenture. You could also, in theory, roll this out as an attribute or a component of your implementation. So anytime that you insert new technology, so ERPs, CRMs, reporting, automation, anytime you do any new process work, you could actually go and create what's called a SCORM file or whatever, the Udacity uses, but SCORM file is typically the standard file type, and it's like a learning management course, and you can teach people how to use it, score it, rank it, etc., see people's performance. And as someone who's done hundreds of projects, it's not the tech that's the problem. It's usually user adoption. And it's because you blow all your budget trying to get the thing up and running. You don't leave anything for the training, and then it just falls by the wayside. Either people don't understand how to use it. Once you go live, you have to make some tweaks, and then people have to adjust, and then they learned it one way, and then they can't course correct. So I'll be interested to see how Accenture rolls this out, if they're thinking both internally and externally, and how quickly that they leverage this technology to go to market. The last story from a global news was something that I was just totally, I don't want to say blown away with, but fired up about. And a lot of the reason for this was the timing. So earlier this week, I had participated into a software demo with a piece of BI or analytics that showed an operator. Basically, one of the use cases was, how much should I reorder with stockouts or to maintain certain stock thresholds. And so I had the software team demo this, and they were like, all right, if you click here, you can drill into the stores, and then you can see, what are their defined thresholds for a product. So they're at, I'm making up the numbers here, 187, and they like to stay within, they like to have their thresholds up to 316 at the units at the start of the week. And so I said, okay, what does 316 equal in terms of assortments, right? Is it, 50 of these, 30 of these, 20 of these, or whatever. And so they did a double click, then another click, another click. So there was like 6 clicks, and sure enough, they got me to the details. But back to what I just talked about change management, it was sort of hard. You'd have to know how to like use a BI tool, and you'd have to know how to like go dig, and you have to almost have like a checklist and then go through these things. And so if you had training, if you had the data right, if you had the team member up to speed and knew that, understood the defined process, you could achieve this. However, there's so much attrition, at these manufacturer or retail locations, and this was a retail example, that it's challenging. And so when I saw that Tableau Pulse was launched, which is Tableau is the analytics solution owned by Salesforce, and basically they've added ChatGPT into it to give it what they're calling deeply integrated and overall Tableau platform, consumer-friendly insights. And I thought that was pretty cool. Got to take a sip of coffee here. So essentially, instead of seeing like, data in a table, it would, serve up some sort of content. If we go back to my example of saying, hey, it's Thursday, you need to place an order within the next 24 hours of, 250 items. Here's the, breakdown of those items to maintain your, thresholds. Do you want to execute that order? And the example with Tableau obviously didn't have the execute side, but one would presume you could daisy chain that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so those are kind of my four stories of what I saw kind of in the global news that I thought was exciting. So let's move over to what I'm really interested in, sort of deep dive, without doing a demo or anything. But, in February, Microsoft finally put out a release on Copilot with their Dynamics CRM solution. So this is their sales engine. And one of the big things that, I was looking at from Dynamics was how are they going to use Copilot and what does that look like? And so, one of the big things was obviously, meeting prep and meeting follow-up. And that's something that like I'm increasingly interested in is how do you pull in all these disparate sources? So you have internal data within one's company, you have external data, with market research tools, LinkedIn tools, surging data. And how do you use that to arm yourself and your teammates who are probably, who may or may not be as focused on sales or focused on that initiative, but almost giving them like an account brief that is super digestible, that they can read 5 minutes before the meeting and be ready to rock. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, let me digest, 5 bullet points and a summary. And so I'm informed on what's going on. And so in terms of meeting prep, the biggest thing that Microsoft is touting is the ability to, analyze emails, obviously their own CRM system, chats, and then serve up almost like summaries and key findings or key insights that would be put into either Teams, OneNote. My hope would be Loop. I'm a huge fan of Loop. And then served up to your team in preparation of that meeting. It'd also be nice, obviously if during the meeting, and I haven't seen this as much with Copilot or OpenAI, but I've seen it with Firefly, which is like a third-party solution. There's a couple others out there where you have an assistant sitting in the meeting and it's capturing everything that's being said, sentiment analysis. It's actually doing an audio recording so you can get sound bites. It will do summaries, action items, key themes, meeting notes. And so that would be really fantastic. And I haven't, run through the Dynamics demo yet with Copilot, but one would presume that that is very feasible within the Microsoft stack. So if you could basically do meeting prep of pulling in third-party data, your own data, and having in a brief. And then during the kind of conversation, you have your standard sort of sales process, you run sort of BANT framework, and then you have meeting notes being captured, action items, and then, all the information then kicks back to your CRM. Action items, tasks, follow-up meetings are all scheduled, automated through, Microsoft's automated like booking app. That would give back, sales folks hundreds of hours a year per person. Obviously, per meeting, it's like 15 or 20 minutes. So, if I think about, meeting prep is, 30 to 40 minutes. The actual meeting is 30 minutes to an hour, and then the follow-up's another 30 minutes. That's 2 hours. So if you could condense that to an hour and 20 minutes, you get 40 minutes back of your time. And I think that would be pretty powerful. The other thing that I would be interested to see is how effective will some of the PowerPoint creation become. And so I don't, when I typically sell or seen people sell, they usually have sort of their standard PowerPoint presentation. And so building something on the fly is probably not required for the whole presentation, but tailoring it based on those needs could be of interest. So if there was a way to say, like, you have your 10 core slides and then you could add one or two that are very client specific, that would be really powerful. But the last thing that I thought was very interesting in this article was the fact that they were talking about how salespeople or just anyone that's using Copilot is going to have to get better and better at their prompts. And so I know when ChatGPT 3.5 came out, I started doing some basic prompting. And so I got like some middle of the road answers. But when I got more advanced with my prompting, asking for better like sort of readouts, and then I understood that it could do, table structuring or organizing data in sort of different formats, I thought that was really powerful. So, I almost started saving prompt libraries. And so when I was prepping for this, show, I wrote down like prompts equal the new PowerPoint slide template, or prompts equal the new Excel model that you share around the office. And I think within the next like 2 or 3 years, people are going to switch from like, hey, can I, can you send me that PowerPoint template? I really like it, or those slides, to, hey, what were those prompts you used to prep for this meeting or to do your follow-up? Or how do you, can you share your prompt library with me? And I think that's going to become sort of the secret sauce for really good to great employees and kind of good teams to sort of, not bad teams, but underperforming teams. All right, so that wraps it up to the deep dive. At the start of the show, I mentioned this was an exciting week. So I've got 2 conferences, one in Chicago, which is ACG Manufacturing Conference. Very fired up about that one. I do a lot of work in the manufacturing space. So if you're going to be in Chicago today, look me up. And if for some reason you wanted to connect but couldn't make it to the conference, you can DM me on LinkedIn or X. It's at Reed Daily. That's ReedDailey. Interesting spelling, I realize, on the first name and last name. It's not the first time that's been called out. And then tomorrow I'm going to be heading to Boston, or actually I'm heading to Boston tonight, and I'm going to the Dealmakers Conference in Boston. And so looking forward to that. It's my first time going to a Dealmakers Conference. I typically go to quite a few ACG events, and I'm sort of refreshed to see a little more programming in this conference. When I looked at who was signed up, it's a nice mix of kind of service providers, operators, deal team, executors, but there's some really good programming. So what I'm going to do for this show is sort of showcase some of the key takeaways. I don't know if that's going to be in one part or 2 parts of like, next week's show, but I'm definitely going to showcase kind of like the learnings from these events, because I've got a number of really interesting events coming up that are more than just like a deal review. And so like, what are the key themes that I'm hearing? What was kind of the sentiment of the market? It will be interesting to see like how geographically that changes, because I typically stay in the Midwest where I live. I'm in Boston about once a month, and I'll be out in San Francisco a couple times this year. So I'll be interested to see sort of those different pockets of, how that looks, or what's the sentiment for people in different sectors or different geos of the world. In terms of, the show, I highlighted at the beginning, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to the show. It's very helpful for me to see who's subscribed on the newsletter. We are, we've passed over the 10,000 download, or 10,000, $100,000 download mark on the show. So I was pretty fired up about that. And so we continue to add, subscribers. So that's been really encouraging. And I've got a few guests lined up from owner operators to tech companies to talk about their, software. So looking forward to bringing on a few more guests. I'm trying to decide if I want to do sort of separate shows for that, where it's really just focused on the guest versus sort of the news and they're part of the show. So let me know what you think. DM me, message me, add in the comments of, would you rather, when we do guests, be a part of like the whole show, or have almost like a separate episode that just focuses on the Q&A with the guest. With that said, enjoy your week, and hopefully I will see you on the road in person, having a cup of coffee or a Negroni, and looking forward to connecting with everyone at the 2 conferences this week. And thanks for tuning in.